OpenAI is already worth more than all of the car companies in the US except Tesla combined. So if OpenAI today wanted to buy all the car factories in the US except Tesla, start using them to produce humanoid robots, they could. Obviously not a good value proposition today, but it's just obvious and overdetermined that in the future when they have superintelligence and they want them, they can start buying up a lot of factories. How fast can they convert these car factories to robot factories? So fastest conversion we were able to find in history was World War II. They suddenly wanted a lot of bombers. So they bought up, in some cases bought up, in other cases got the car companies to produce new factories, but they bought up the car factories, converted them to bomber factories. That took about 3 years from the time when they first decided to start this process to the time when the factories were producing a bomber an hour. We think it will potentially take less with superintelligence because, first of all, if you look at the history of this process, despite this being the fastest anybody has ever done this, it was actually kind of a comedy of errors. They made a bunch of really silly mistakes in this process. If you actually have something that even just doesn't have the normal human bureaucratic problems, and we do think that this will be done in the middle of an arms race with China, so the government will be kind of moving things through. And then the superintelligences will be good at the logistical issues, navigating bureaucracies. So we estimated maybe if everything goes right, we can do this 3 times faster than the bomber conversions in World War II. So that's about a year.
I'm assuming the bombers were just much less sophisticated than the kind of humanoid robots.
Yeah, but the car factories of that time were also much less sophisticated than the car factories of our time.
I would assume the conversion speed was also... maybe to give one hypothetical here. Right now... Let's just take like biomedicine as an example of like a field, one of the fields you'd want to accelerate. And whenever these CEOs get on podcasts, they're often talking about curing cancer and so forth. And it seems like a big thing these frontier biomedical research facilities are excited about is the virtual cell. Now, the virtual cell is it takes like a tremendous amount of compute, I assume, to train these DNA foundation models and to do all the other computation necessary to simulate a virtual cell. If it is the case that the cure for Alzheimer's and cancer and so forth is bottlenecked by the virtual cell, it's not clear if you had 1 million superintelligences in the 60s and you asked them, cure cancer for me, they would just have to solve making GPUs at scale, which would require solving all kinds of interesting physics and chemistry problems, material science problems, building fabs for computing, and then like going through 40 years of making more and more efficient fabs that can make do all of Moore's law from scratch, and that's just like one technology. And it just seems like you just need this broad scale. The entire economy needs to be upgraded for you to cure cancer in the 60s, right? Just because you need the GPUs to do the virtual cell, assuming that's the bottleneck.
So, first of all, I agree if there's only one way to do something, that makes it much harder, and maybe that one way takes very long. We're assuming that there may be more than one way to cure cancer, more than one way to do all of these things, and they'll be working on finding the one that is least bottlenecked. Part of the reason I realize I spent too long talking about that robot example, but we do think that they're going to be getting a lot of physical world things done very quickly. Once you have 1 million robots a month, you can actually do a lot of physical world experiments. We look at examples of people trying to get entire economies off the ground very quickly. So for example, China post-Deng. I don't know, would you have predicted that 20, 30 years after being kind of a communist basket case, they can actually be doing this really cutting-edge bio-research? I realize that's a much weaker thing than we're positing, but it was done just with the human brain with a lot fewer resources than we're talking about. Same issue with, let's say, Elon Musk and SpaceX. I think in the year 2000, we would not have thought that somebody could move 2 times, 5 times faster than NASA. With pretty limited resources, they were able to get, I think a lot more years of technological advance in than we would have expected. Partly that's because just Elon is crazy and never sleeps. If you look at the examples of things from SpaceX, he is breathing down every worker's neck, being like, what's this part? How fast is this part going? Can we do this part faster? And the limiting factor is basically hours in Elon's day, in the sense that he cannot be doing that with every employee all the time.
Superintelligence is not even that smart. It just yells at every single worker.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of my model, is that we have some We have something which is smarter than Elon Musk, better at optimizing things than Elon Musk. We have like 10,000 parts in a rocket supply chain. How many of those parts can Elon personally yell at people to optimize? We could have a different copy of this superintelligence optimizing every single part full time. I think that's just a really big speed up.